All right, welcome to week one of the Malabrigo Knit Along, the Orienta shawl. So happy to see all your wonderful faces. And let's definitely get knitting. Before we do, some little housekeeping things right away. I wanted to go ahead and introduce our Malabrigo representatives that we have here with us today. Feel free to pop on and say hi if you'd like. We have Bernadita, she is here, as well as Hen. He is here as well.
Hi
Hi
everyone.
everyone.
They will kind of be looking at the chat while I'm going to be answering some questions as much as I can, and also going through the getting us started on the shawl, on the knit along, casting on, and addressing a lot of questions also that have come up in the Facebook group and emails that we've received. Feel free at any point. I see there's already people popping into the chat saying hello, where you're from. It's great to see people from all over the world joining this knit along. It's just like gives me the goosebumps in a great way of seeing how we can all come together over this shared love of knitting, and over a beautiful design. So, if you have a question that you'd like to voice, you can please know that on the recording, your voice will be recorded. So you can either voice it, you can plop it into the chat. You can also use, if you're techie, I am not the most techie person, but I know that Zoom has a button called React down at the bottom of your screen where you can like lift a little hand, or you can add emojis to the screen and people will see it. It's kind of a fun way to interact without voice. Yes, we've got Carol with a thumbs up. For those of you that don't know me, I am Jill Tamminen. I own Knit Sisu Designs and Instructions, and I am so honored, so happy, and excited to be leading another Malabrigo knit along. I think this is my fourth that I've been instructing, and every time Malabrigo reaches out, I'm just like, yes, yes, tell me what you want me to do. Yes. It's always so great. Wonderful team to work with, and always the most fabulous yarn to work with. So we'll go ahead and get started right away. All right, looking at very first Cal, Donna, welcome. I hope you love it. I'm going to spotlight my box, and then I will go ahead and switch in between, and I'll kind of voice it to make sure that I don't get anyone seasick in regards to, seriously, Zoom changed everything. How do I change my view? There we go. I'll go in between my hands being spotlit so you can see exactly what I'm looking at in regards and what you're looking at in your hands, for doing some of these techniques close up. All right. So the Orienta shawl. This is a beautiful, beautiful shawl where uses sock. And a question came up. We'll just knock this one out real quick. A question has come up a few times is if we can use different yarn for the shawl. And while this one uses sock, ultimate sock can also be used. This is the kind of the point of the knit along is that we are all working together on the same piece and seeing the beauty of how it comes together with the same type of yarn, obviously different colors. If you want to substitute like Arroyo or Dos Tierras, other beautiful Malabrigo yarns, you may have to do a little bit of some needle size changing, not a ton. I'm happy to help you with that on an individual basis. But it's in order to participate in the giveaways, we are asking that you use the sock yarn. So, did I get all that right, Hen? Okay, cool. Oh, I just saw Pat saying hi from Upper Michigan. I am currently located in Detroit, Michigan, so that's why that one
Ah,
stuck out at me. Yeah. Not for long, we're moving, but we are in Detroit right now and having a beautiful spring day. So, The shape of this shawl is, as it's finished, I should say, when it is finished, you have an asymmetrical triangle shawl. Very similar to some of the other asymmetrical shapes that we've done, like the alpine shawl or the Barnstable shawl. Barnstable is a little more of a boomerang, but this one, it gets to this structure in a little bit different way. And we've had some questions about that online. Let's go ahead and look at the structure. So I lost my camera.
The original shawl was done in machita.
Yes, yes, it was.
Can I use that?
Which is another fingering yarn. Hen, do you want to field that question? Can someone use Machita?
Hi everyone. Of course, you're welcome to use any yarns you like, but for the sake of giveaways, we always require the yarn used for the knitting to be the one featured for the knit on. So in this case, it would be sock or ultimate sock. And just a remark, because I saw some questions about this, Metamorphosis is a sock yarn color collection, so it's welcome as well.
Is that the new collection that?
No,
Or-
it's an older one.
Gotcha. Cool.
Machita is the same. It's the same gauge. It's the same title, as you say. You can use it perfectly. You won't have to do any maths. It's the same base, just in a single ply. But it won't get you in for the giveaways. That's it.
Okay. So let's go ahead and back to the shape of the shawl. I have a very small, very miniature view of what's going to happen to the shape of your shawl. So we start right here, and then we grow the garter, and then obviously with the repeats, which we will get into. But we have this center midline that goes all the way up. And once we get into the even body section of the pattern, you're going to notice that to the left of your stitch marker, or the left of that midline, the stitches get fewer and fewer. And that's because we are doing a decrease, but keeping our stitch count the same. Whereas until we get to the even body, we are growing our shawl from either side with increases. So this line ends up becoming the end point of your shawl. And then you can see I have a few more stitches over here. That's because we've picked up the edging. So this is where you end up getting that triangle shape that becomes a very cool, like that's how it'll end up looking, ends up becoming a very cool way, an innovative way to get there. Now, that being said, I've heard a lot of people who have gotten started, and some have even, I've seen some people finish like 4 shawls. That's amazing. We got some speed knitters on our hands here. But if you're casting on with us for the first time today, you will notice as we kind of go through this that we have quite a few repeats. So we start with this this garter section. It's the increased garter section. And then we move into that lattice lace. And then we have a couple stripes in there with the contrasting colors. We have that repeat of the garter and the lace, and then another garter and lace. So you're going to see 3 different lace sections before you get to that even body section of the pattern. So a few tips here. We are using a fingering weight yarn. As Hannah had mentioned, it's whether you're using Machita or sock, ultimate sock, they're all fingering weight yarns. We're also using a size 6 needle, which tends to be a little bit larger of a needle for a fingering weight. Obviously, we're not making socks here, so we're not knitting on a size 2, thank goodness. But the size 6 needle actually gives you a really lovely drape. It gives you a really lovely lay to this piece mixed with the yarn itself. So you don't have as much of a structured, if you did the Barnstable shawl with a larger weight yarn, it had a little more structure to it, whereas this one has a lot more fluidity to it. It's a beautiful transition piece, so it's great that we are doing this knit along kind of right before transitioning seasons. No matter where you are in the world, we're kind of in a transition right now. So make sure Kathy Ann, you are hitting at what I'm about to touch upon. If you would rather not use, I have heard some people say that using a larger needle with a smaller yarn, the US size 6 with the fingering, feels a little too like the stitches are going to fall off or it's too cumbersome. You can change your needle size. That isn't going to affect, obviously, stitch count. It will affect the feel of the fabric. So if you want your fabric to be a little bit more structured, a little bit tighter, tighter stitches, you can go down in your needle size. Really, this is just preference. If we were doing something like a sweater or something fitted, I wouldn't recommend doing that without gauging. So this is obviously an accessory, so we can kind of change the fabric in order to, or change our needle size in order to manipulate the feel of the fabric. Hopefully that makes sense. So with this center line that goes up, I kept my mistakes. Yeah, I see Debbie said you're using a size 5. I've made a few mistakes in here. You can see mine right here at the end of the lace and how I got off on my center line. And that has, I've noticed on the Facebook group, kind of happened a few times. Another trick to help yourself with the whole center line, stitch count, and removing the stitch marker situation is to use a stitch marker that does not have any flourishes to it. Every right side row, we're taking off the stitch marker and then putting it back on. And so having a stitch marker that's very decorative, like with the dangles and stuff, while they're beautiful and fun, it can be a little cumbersome to use those. So I would say, just for the sake of ease, obviously everything is preference and choice, but for the sake of ease, using a stitch marker that is a little bit more simple is easier to go about. The other thing to keep in mind is that we increase our shawl 2 stitches by the end of your wrong side row. So on the right side row, this will be the same up until you get to the even body section. On the right side row, you are increasing at the beginning, doing a double decrease in the middle. So we add 1, take away 2, add 1 at the end of the right side. So if any algebra fans out there, we're even at that point. Our stitch count is even. We add 2, we take away 2. So then when you flip over to the wrong side, we start our wrong side with an increase. We end our wrong side with an increase. Those are the 2 increases. They're a knit front and back. Those are the 2 increases that grow your shawl, that create the +2 stitch count going up. The other thing to keep in mind, and this will make, I'll come back to this as when we start knitting, your stitch marker in that center line right there, to help you kind of keep track. You looking at the right side, you will always have 3 more stitches on the physical. I'm not talking about right side, wrong side. I'm talking about literally right, like right and left. So the right side of the stitch marker has 3 more stitches than the left side of the stitch marker. So that's a good way to kind of keep track of keeping stock as you go along, and how to make sure you're kind of on the right track. We're going to be alternating between 2 different foundational fabrics. There are 3 foundational fabrics in knitting. The 2 we are going to be looking at is Garter, which is knitting the right side, knitting the wrong side. Great for shawls because it's a reversible stitch. And then lace is technically a stockinette stitch because you are knitting, doing knit stitches or knit-based stitches on the right side, and then you're purling the wrong side back. So that is a stockinette base. That is why I also haven't blocked this purposefully because I wanted to show you. I've seen some questions about like how the middle line, you know, in the stockinette, or I'm sorry, in the lace section can kind of bubble up. That will definitely go away with blocking. But just so you don't think anyone doesn't think they're doing anything wrong, that will happen right there. So I wanted to go ahead and keep that as it shows. So Gary, I'm sorry if I pronounced that incorrectly, the right side row does not increase. Technically, no. You're doing increases. You're doing a knit front and back at the beginning. You're doing a knit front and back at the ends. Again, looking at the right side. That increases +1, +1. We do -2 decrease in the center. So if we start with 10 stitches on the right side row, you're going to end, actually, that's a bad number. The numbers are always odd. So if we start with 11 stitches on the right side row, you're going to end the right side row with 11 stitches. When you finish the wrong side, so the corresponding wrong side, you do your increase at the beginning, increase at the end, and you will end with +2. So you will have 13 stitches. Whoa. Gotcha. As far as the puckering being noted in the pattern, it's kind of just it's something to look out for. I know that some people have kind of noticed that and worried about it. I think that's just the designer's preference, whether they want to acknowledge that that could happen or not, but it definitely goes away with blocking. And it's also understanding the foundational stitches and how stockinette stitch lies differently than a garter stitch. So, would doing the lace part in garter change it a lot? Janet, I call this BYOD, being your own designer. Great question. I haven't tried it, but if you are doing a garter base on the lace part, the front side or the knit side, the right side will stay the same. The wrong side, instead of purling back, you're going to knit back. That will change the way that it looks because these, I'm going to zoom in, not to get anyone seasick here. These stitches right here, instead of them being little V's as they are as a stockinette, they're going to be little bumps like a garter. So it will change the look. It will not change your stitch count, and it's up to you. If you just don't like purling, then try it out. Play and practice, maybe on a little swatch first. So great questions. Georgia, I see your question about the SK2P versus the S2KP, and yes, we are going to address that today. Let's get started. Not that we haven't already gotten started. I mean, you know what I mean. So a couple of things, if you've done a knit along with me before, you know that I, just for the ease of time and questions, I do a much smaller swatch on these videos than what you are working on. So don't necessarily go by my stitch counts, although I will refer to the correct stitch counts in the pattern. I do that similarly to how I showed you the structure of the shawl here. I'm doing a much smaller swatch so we can address more things faster. Also in this pattern, I am using, or for these recorded videos, I'm using a larger yarn. I'm actually using the Malabrigo Seis Cabos yarn here so that it can be more visual or more easily seen by you on the camera. If you have looked into the pre-recorded videos, I used the sock yarn. So you'll be able to see how it looks in the sock yarn on those pre-recorded videos. But for the sake of this, I'm using a larger yarn so you can more visually see it. We start with a very small cast on, 5 stitches. I'm seeing some questions and I will get to them. I didn't want to let you think that I didn't see them. We start with this cast on of 5 stitches. I personally don't care for knots in my knitting. So this is the no knot long tail cast on. You have your tail around your thumb. You have the working yarn around your first finger. The most important part about a long tail cast on are these 3 fingers. They hold both strands of yarn at the same time and they hold your tension right here. This strand right there is your taking place of a slip knot. If you want to go ahead and do a slip knot, feel free. This just takes place. So here we go. We put our needle on top and then bring it towards us. That little thing right there takes place of your knot, believe it or not. Hold it in place, and now you have what looks like your normal long tail cast on. Thumb through, tighten. And if you want a more detailed view of this, you can look at the pre-recorded. I have a video just on the cast on. So that very first stitch that takes place of the slip knot counts as 1 stitch, and then we are good to go. So in the pattern, we have a wrong side setup prior to getting into that garter. Let me go ahead also and mention one thing before I get into the setup. And we might be able to talk about this. I'm going to touch on it, and then if you have specific questions, we can go into more detail. This pattern does not have edging to it. We do not have a specific edge. It's just kind of your standard garter edge as you go along. If you are a fan of a selvage, which is a fancy word for a fancy edge, something like a slip stitch or an I-cord, what you will need to do is add extra stitches to your cast on in order to do that. Feel free, if you are interested in adding edging to your piece, feel free to contact me and we can go over that very specifically in detail. But for the sake of the pattern and how it's written, we start with our increase right away, our knit front and back. Surprisingly, this stitch can give people a lot of problems because we kind of think that we're not supposed to manhandle our yarn, and we actually can. We can be a little rough with it. So when we do this knit front and back, the knit front means a normal stitch, and then separate your stitches. Separate your needles like this. Not your stitches, your needles, I'm sorry. And what that does is it gives you space. It gives you space and ease to twist your front needle into the back, and then you knit through the back loop like that. So get comfortable with this increase because you're going to be doing it for the whole piece. After that first knit front and back, you're going to place that marker. And then you're going to knit 3. I saw knit front and back as hard as a tight knitter. This trick is what stops it from being tight. Where you go into the stitch, here we go again, wrap around, come through, separate your needles, pull them apart. Doesn't matter if you're English or continental. See how much room I've given myself in that stitch? And then you're going to go into the back of the stitch, and it's not tight at all. Okay, so there's your setup. And Donna, yes, the beginning, oh gosh, with everything, anything in life, the beginning is always the hardest, and the first row of knitting is always the hardest too. So just give yourself a little bit of grace and compassion that you are doing it. So now let's go ahead and look at that increased garter section, and this is where we are going to be introduced to our double decrease here. So row 1, ooh, stop. I'm getting ahead of myself. You can do this now, or you can do this maybe at the next right side row that you get to, whatever works best for you. I do recommend, especially at the beginning, you probably won't need it later on into the work, but definitely at the beginning, having a removable stitch marker, one that either clasps or this one's just like a roundabout thing. and attaching it to the right side of your work. Garter, as mentioned, is a reversible fabric. And to be honest, I mentioned this in one of my Facebook posts. I think it was yesterday or the day before. I didn't feel like the beginning of this shawl was incredibly intuitive. It does feel different than a lot of other shawl constructions that I personally have done in the past. And I noticed a lot of people also felt the same way. I ripped this shawl out 7 times. Like I got this far, ripped it out, got this far, ripped it out. I ripped it out multiple times, 7 times before I actually got to the shape and structure and understanding the architecture of what I was reading. And so one key thing to help with that is to keep track of your right side with a removable stitch marker. So here we go with our row 1. I see lots of chats happening. Am I missing anything that I really need? I'm good? Okay. Thanks, Hen. Okay, so here's my knit front and back. And I tell you that 7-time things just to let you know that, hey, this happens. Like sometimes we need to just start over and keep going and enjoy the perseverance and become comfortable with the discomfort of ripping out our work. Because it happens and it's okay. So in our increased garter section, you're going to be doing this a lot. You will start with your increase and then you're going to get to your 3 stitches. I'm going to remove this because it's a little big. 3 stitches before the stitch marker. This is where your SK to P comes into play. So an S stands for slip. Your K2 is knit 2, and it's actually a knit 2 together. And then the P is the pass the slip stitch over. So here's kind of a hint or in knitting for all knitting patterns. A slip as a standard slip is always slipped knitwise unless otherwise stated. Back up. I said that completely wrong because my can we erase what I just said? I don't think editing does that. Okay. I'm so sorry. You're always going to slip purlwise unless otherwise stated. The way my brain got ahead of me there is because in this pattern, we also have an SSK and we also have another double decrease that slips knitwise. And so I'm going to show you the difference between those today. But for the pattern that is the decrease that is written at the beginning of the pattern, you're going to slip purlwise. You're going to knit 2 together. And then you're going to pass the slip stitch over like this. So it's like a bind off, like that. And then you get a little 2-stitch decrease here, and I'll show you what it looks like in the pattern. And then you're going to remove your marker. This is why having a stitch marker that's simple is a little easier. You're going to knit 1, and then you're going to put your stitch marker back on. Knit until the last stitch, which in the very beginning is just 1, and then a knit front and back like that. It doesn't look like much yet. Your wrong side gives you a little moment to breathe. I like to call these buffer rows. Knit front and back. Knit until the last stitch. And then you're going to knit front and back. Okay, we're looking back at our right side again. So let me put this there. I took it off because I wanted to show you that double decrease without anything in the way. So now just to give ourselves those tips, it doesn't look like we're in the center, and technically we're not, but remember we have a 2-stitch decrease right here. And so remember, to the physical right side of your stitch marker, you're going to always have 3 more stitches. So I have 3 here and 3 extra here. So we're right on track. So let's do this one more time. Going to knit front and back. To 3 stitches before the marker. S, K, 2P, slip, slip purlwise, knit 2 together. P, pass the slip stitch over, right here. Drop your stitch marker, knit 1, pick up your stitch marker, knit to the end, or knit to last stitch before the end, and then knit front and back. Oops, I didn't get in the back. So let me go ahead across the wrong side, and then I'll catch up with any questions, and also get ready to start the lace. So knit front and back. I also found, and this is a preference thing, I also found that having needles that were a little bit more stiletto, a little sharper, helped in this pattern. Pretty much anytime you have, I like to use sharper needles when I'm working with smaller gauge yarns like fingering yarns. Also when I'm working lace and I need to do a lot of increases and decreases. I found that having a sharp tip as opposed to a more dull tip helps make those stitches a lot easier to accomplish. So the last stitch is a knit front and back. So that is your garter section. Little itty bitty part of it right there that you're going to be doing a lot of in this pattern. So let me go ahead and Hen and Bernadita, if you could help me out with any questions that I might need to address specifically with the garter. Yes. Lifelines, we will talk about lifelines.
Hi, Jill. I just tagged you in a question by Susan Dubinsky. I'm not sure if you were able to see the tag, but I will read it out loud.
Okay. I didn't know you could tag people. Thank you for for doing that. Okay, if we have to frog the lace section and lose track of where the stitch marker goes, how many stitches to the left of the midline should we replace the marker? Susan, good question. It depends on how many, you have to know how many your stitch count is within the row. One thing to kind of keep in mind that when you start a right side row, you're always going to have an odd number of stitches. You're not going to have an even number until you get to the even body section. So in this increase, anywhere that you're increasing, the lattice lace, the garter, you're always going to start with an odd number of stitches. And then you're always going to have, so count in, take away 3 stitches on the right, physical right, and then you will have the same number of stitches on either side of the stitch marker. So you're always going to have 3 extra here on the physical right side. So if you lose your stitch marker, have to pull out whatever it is, you want to count the same number. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Oops, I miscounted. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Well, I must have dropped one. And then you have 3 stitches on the other side. Okay. Hold on, I want to make sure that I didn't completely mess up because I don't have the right number. See, this is how this happens. Real time, friends. My knit front and back didn't go through, looks like. So as I am fixing this, Want to make sure I have any other questions. Okay. Yes, Liz, on Facebook, someone posted, there have been a lot of suggestions and on Facebook on how to do the stitch count charts, and that's kind of what makes this community knit along really lovely, really great. So, are we good to go kind of looking at, oh, with the benefit of seeing the completed shawl in progress, is there a way to minimize the tapering or drawing inward to the edges? Or will blocking help minimize the tapering? I'm gonna pull back a little bit. Kath, Mona, I'm not sure exactly what you're referring to. Are you referring to
Yeah.
this?
Some samples are after the lace stitch, there's a considerable it's like C curve but inverted. Yours is essentially straight or direct, and I didn't know if the draw in was a result of the change in stitch being knitted. Yours is fairly direct.
Yeah, I mean, possibly. Stockinette is a looser fabric, and lace is also a looser fabric. So when you combine those two things and then you immediately go back into garter, you can get like a little bit of a wave effect here.
Mhm.
It really just kind of is a play. I have like a little bit going on. It's a play on tension, and it's also understanding the tightness and how the fabric pulls in. But
Okay.
to your point, or to your first part of your question, blocking will definitely help with that.
I don't know if it's appropriate to ask.
Sure.
One person indicated they added two knit stitches on each side just to perhaps balance the edge. It,
Um, I read that too. I didn't see balance. It was more for adding a selve edge, like
okay,
adding an I cord or adding a slip stitch
okay,
to the side to make it a little bit more refined on the
okay,
edging. But you would have to, if you want to add edging to your piece, that would happen at the very beginning instead of casting on. If you're just going to do a slip stitch, instead of casting on 5 stitches, you would have to cast on 7 in order to account for your slip stitch on each edge. And then after the slip stitch, go right into the knit front and back, following the pattern as written.
thank you.
Yeah. Thank you, Kathy. Um, Deb, I am going to get into carrying up there's a multiple number of ways to carry up the yarn in those slip rows, or in the rows where we change our colors. But that's a nice kind of transition into attaching our contrasting color. So when you start with the lattice lace, you'll see that there are 2 setup rows, a right side and a wrong side. You will already have had at this point, before we get to the lace, you'll already have had a significant garter and have attached your uh, contrast color already. But I'm going to go ahead and show you how I do it. Specifically, because we do not have a that selve edge, we don't have that edge right there. By just attaching a new color like this at the edge, it can get really loose. I don't prefer that. If you're fine with it and tie a little knot with your tails together to tighten it up, that's great. What I like to do when I'm attaching a new color is, and before I do that, I just want to make sure, double check one more time that my count is okay before we get going. Okay. Um, so when I like to attach a new yarn, I do what's called a double-stranded stitch. And honestly, I do this when I am about to even if I'm using the same color and I'm attaching a new ball of yarn, instead of just knitting with the new color, you think about it, your knit stitches, kind of the architecture of knitting, each knit stitch is held together by the stitch below it, above it, and to either side of it. And so when you attach a new yarn, it's not being held together by anything except the one stitch that you create with it. And so by holding both of your yarns together at once and doing a double-stranded stitch, you automatically weave in or knit in the new color with the structure of the old yarn. It's almost like if you've ever broken your finger and they buddy tape your fingers together so that one finger has the structure and the strength of the other one. That's kind of exactly what we're doing here with yarn. So to add your new color, it's a knit front and back, remember. So we're just going to knit front with the first color, and then we're going to knit in the back with the new color. Now I'll show you what this looks like when we come back to it as a double-stranded stitch. So the setup row for the lattice lace section is just the increased garter. We're just using our contrasting color. So we're going to knit until 3 stitches before our stitch marker, slip, knit 2 together, pass the slip stitch over, drop our stitch marker, knit 1, pick up our stitch marker, knit to the end. Now, the lattice lace section introduces another double decrease in row 3. It is the, instead of it being the SK, it's the S2K. You may have also seen it in other patterns labeled CDD, which is a center double decrease. I'll show you how to do that and how it looks different. And I have had the question, can those two be interchangeable even in the garter lace section? And the answer is yes, because it's a double decrease. So a preview as to what's to come. On the setup row 2 for the lattice lace, you'll notice, and this is where I don't want to say a mistake can happen, but a misstep in the in the knitting can happen. It's not a mistake because you won't lose stitch count, you won't lose structure, but you are introducing here a change of fabric. So instead of going from knitting on the wrong side for a garter fabric, now we're going to purl. And this is the first kind of step towards our stockinette fabric. So you're going to purl across the wrong side. Again, if you knit across the wrong side, consider it possibly a design feature and love it for what it is. So now I'm getting to where I have attached my new yarn, and again, I have to do my knit front and back. This is 1 stitch, 2 colors, 1 stitch. So I make sure I get into both of them for my knit front and back. And then you will feel how you just pull on your tails here. You'll feel how your stitch, your new color is tight and attached. There's no loosey-goosey attachment here and nothing to worry about. Now let's get into the lace. So I would suggest, if you haven't done lace before, to insert a lifeline. Lifelines do exactly that. They save your life. And if you've never used a lifeline before, it's just a strand of yarn that is inserted into the row in case you have to, like, we're doing our lace this much and you're doing great, but then you have like a mistake right here and you're like, 4-letter word that's not knit or purl, I need to pull back. And you pull back, you take out, you frog it, meaning you take your live stitches off the needle and you pull the yarn. The lifeline will keep your stitches live. You'll be able to then put your needle back onto that exact row where you know everything is fine. And then you can always just pull out your lifeline later on. A common mistake with lifelines is people will insert a yarn that is, or I've even seen people use like embroidery thread. Please don't do that. The purpose of your needle is to hold the circumference of a stitch in a certain shape and a certain size. So when you take the stitch off the needle, it pretty much maintains that size unless you yank on the yarn. So if you use we're already using small yarn, fingering weight yarn, and you use even smaller yarn for your lifeline, it's going to be very difficult to put those teeny tiny stitches back on your needle. So I do recommend that you use a lifeline that is fingering weight yarn, or maybe even sport weight, dare I say? Something that will easily allow you to get the stitches back on the needle and keep the circumference of the live stitch. Does that make sense?
Mhm.
Okay. So if you've never done a lifeline before, yeah, Donna said I'd go bigger than fingering weight. I tend to do that too. So I have another Seis Cabos yarn here. This one's in Wales Road, another one of my favorite colors. I'm going to pull back my camera. Someone in the neighborhood has just started, because we're having a beautiful day here in Detroit, they just started doing yard work. So I'm sorry if you can hear in the camera the weed whacking that's going on in the background. Just started. So you want to use a tapestry needle. You're going to go ahead and cut your yarn long enough for your piece. And then I find it easiest to move on to the cord. You're just going to weave your yarn through your stitches. Mistake that often happens here. With a lifeline, people will go through the stitch marker. Do not go through the stitch marker, because the stitch marker needs to go up with you and the lifeline stays where it is. So do not go through the stitch marker, and then continue through. Pull the yarn through. And there you go. So this purple line of yarn, if I make a mistake, however far up, and I need to pull back, that purple strand of yarn will keep my stitches live, unharmed, unfalling, no drop stitches if the lifeline is present. So again, 3 biggest tips of the lifeline: use a yarn that is of similar gauge or maybe even a little bit bigger than the yarn you're using. Do not go through your stitch marker. And then the third tip is be mindful of when you're knitting the very first row after your lifeline is inserted. You want to make sure that you don't, I got a lot of tails working here, try to make it a little neater. You want to make sure as you go into the first stitch, you're actually getting the stitch, you're not picking up the lifeline too. Okay. So I'm going to remove my lifeline. They're super easy to remove at any time. You just pull and it comes out. Lydia, yes, the silicone ones can work as well if you have those. So now let's lace it up. Getting a little bit out of muscle memory, row 1 of the lattice lace does not have a knit front and back at the beginning. This pattern incorporates the stitch count by doing Corey Boberg, who is the designer of this shawl, did the math. Thank you, Corey, and able to figure out how many stitches with the yarn overs within the lace are needed to keep your stitch count going. So instead of doing a knit front and back, we're starting with a knit 1. And then it's a yarn over SSK. The SSK is the most incorrectly done stitch in knitting. The reason why is what I was mentioning earlier about slip stitches. Slip stitches are always done purlwise unless otherwise stated in the pattern, except for the SSK. SSK is slip knit, slip knit. I like to take my thumb and my first finger and pull down. I pull down on the working yarn to insert my needle into both the stitches. If you're an English knitter, meaning you hold the yarn in your right hand, the yarn over will complete itself when you go to knit the next stitch, like that. I'll show you what it looks like as a continental knitter. So the yarn over, I'm not a natural continental knitter, so stick with me. The yarn over happens, the yarn is in the back. You slip knitwise, slip knitwise. That yarn over stays there. You can see it right there. Pull down on the fabric to insert your needle into the front of the stitches and then knit. Woo! Told you I'm not a natural continental knitter. Knit the stitch. Okay. Can you clarify the repeats before the lace section? I'll go ahead and look at the repeats really quick here, real quick. And I also did a post on the Facebook page, and I also have a video on the repeats. It's a pre-recorded video. So when you're looking at the instructions in the pattern, you're going to follow it going all the way down, all the way down. Pay attention to that little double asterisk there. It tells you how many times to work the pattern. You can either count, I can show you how to count your stitches. You can also, or count your rows, excuse me. Liz, yes, those videos were posted on YouTube, or you can tally mark your repeats. You have your stitch counts that are listed there as well. When you get down to the repeat, it says repeat from this star section once. Oh, you go back to here. And so you then just continue going. Continue going down. And when you get to that lattice lace section, sorry, my window is open. Thus my papers are flying. When you get to that lattice lace section, you're going to do rows 1 and 2. Rows 1 through 4 are right here. Okay. But the best way to keep track, I'll finish my thought here. As you continue down with the repeat, you'll get down here once more, and then it will tell you, so this is the third time after you repeat, this is going to be your third lattice lace right there. You're going to do your stripe section and then your lattice lace once more, getting you to 179 stitches. But the best way to keep track of your stitches is to remember that you are going to have 3 stitches on the right side, 3 more stitches on the right side of your stitch marker than the left. And you are also going to increase 2 stitches on the wrong side of your work throughout the piece. So I hope that answered your question. When mistakes I've noticed have happened in this pattern, it's usually a forgotten knit front and back, either on the right side or the wrong side, because again, we're doing that stitch on both sides of our work. Or it's the double decrease and the stitch marker removal combination. So let me get my bearings back to lace here in order to do the correct decrease. Okay. I have to close my window. Like all my papers are, my pattern's blowing all over the place. Okay, so we have, make sure I'm good here. On the very first row of your lace pattern, you're going to repeat your yarn over SSK to 3 stitches before your marker. So there we go, 3 stitches before the marker. We're going to yarn over and then do the same decrease that we've been doing, which is the slip 1, knit two together, slip, pass the slip stitch over. And this time we're going to yarn over. I messed up again. No, I didn't. There's my yarn over. I was like, I'm skipping. I'm looking at the pattern. I messed up again. Nope. There's my yarn over, my SSK. You can always tell a yarn over. Here's reading the knitting here. So going back, I'm glad this happened. So that way we can go back and read. We have our knits. We have our yarn over, which looks like that eyelet. SSK, yarn over, SSK, yarn over, my S, my slip, knit two, pass the slip stitch over, decrease. You can see it right there. This is what indicates that you're passing the slip stitch over, this line right there. It kind of hugs, again, just like a bind off, it hugs that stitch. And then you're going to yarn over, slip your marker. This is another reason why having a kind of a simple stitch marker is helpful, because you're going to have a yarn over. You're going to have a yarn over before you slip your marker. And then you're going to do the symmetrical opposite of the SSK, which is a knit two together. An SSK stitch leans to the left, a knit two together leans to the right. So we're going to knit two together, yarn over, that's your repeat, knit two together, yarn over, and I can see this is where I had made my mistake before. You're going to do this until the very last stitch. Now, something to keep in mind here, this is where another mistake in the lace happens. Oops. I'm looking at my old pattern because I had lots of notes on that. In this lattice lace, do you see how knit two together, yarn over is your repeat? You're going to do that repeat before the last stitch, which is just a knit one. It's really easy to forget that yarn over before the knit one. So I just did yarn over, knit two together, so I have to yarn over, knit one. And now the wrong side is a purl side. This is where your increase takes place. Knit front and back as your very first stitch. And then you're going to purl back. Now, little tip here. Yarn overs are very easy to drop because they need two rows in order to close them. So you have a stitch that is this horizontally kind of loosey-goosey stitch on your needle. If you drop it, it just goes away. And so paying attention and reading your knitting, as you're going on the wrong side, you know that you're going to have a normal stitch yarn over, your normal stitch yarn over as you purl across. And if you notice that you miss a yarn over, the best way to pick it up, there will always be a bar connecting these two stitches. Best way to pick it up is literally put it back on your needle like that. You're going to purl across, purl across, purl across. And then the last stitch is a knit front and back. Now row 3 of the lattice lace has a similar design. You could already see your little eyelets forming. It uses a different decrease. So let's look at the differences between these decreases. Row 3, we are starting with a knit 1, and then our yarn over, SSK, repeat. So now you are going to do this 4 stitches before your 4 stitches before the stitch marker. So you're going to yarn over, knit 1, And now you have your 3 for your decrease. Yes, I will send the link to this recording. When you do this new decrease, it's the S2KP, otherwise also known as the CDD or the center double decrease. What you're going to do is slip 2 stitches. You're going to slip 2 stitches knitwise. So this is the other, when I mentioned earlier talking about slip stitches, most slip stitches are always done purlwise. The 2 stitches that are slipped knitwise in this pattern are the SSK as well as the center double decrease or the S2KP. So I'm going to slip 2 stitches knitwise. I'm going to knit 1. And then I'm going to pick up both of the stitches that I slipped knitwise and I'm going to pass them over. You can see they create a different look. So the other decrease, and I'll show it, it looks, this is such a small swatch, I'll show it to you on the bigger one. The decrease that we've been doing in the garter section, it has that little line across. This one actually has the stitch lining up and down. So I have had the question, can I do this decrease throughout the whole thing and just have that straight stitch line go all the way up? Yes, you can. All you technically need for this is a 2-stitch decrease. So you could even do a knit 3 together and it would work if that works the best for you. If you don't want to mess with going back and forth between these stitches for your center line where you're decreasing 2 stitches, you could just do a knit 3 together and that would work too. So here's where you will remove your marker, knit 1. This feels familiar. Put your marker back on, yarn over, and then your repeat is a knit 2 together, yarn over, and your knit 2 together, yarn over. You're going to do that until the last stitch. Remember that that last stitch is going to require you to have a yarn over to finish the repeat right before it, right there, like that. And then you're going to purl back. So to show you what happens here, this is your first decrease. You're past the slip stitch over, you slip, knit 2, pass the slip stitch over. This is your second one right here. So you can see it kind of lies flat on top of it, on top of the stitch. And so it alternates throughout. You know, every designer kind of does their own thing with form and function. I think this designer wanted to have it look a little bit like a lattice with how the stitches kind of combine right here with the pass the slip stitch over and then in the middle just looking like it's straight up and down. But BYOD, do what works for you. Just make sure that you're doing a double decrease in those spots. So if you've never done lace before, Sherry saw the statement, you've never done lace, go slow. I also recommend that you do a little, I call it play and practice. Pretty much essentially what I'm doing right here is very, very small. Practice, you don't have to go into the whole pattern, just do a modified version of it. Or even cast on just the stitch counts. I think it was 47 wherever that 43 stitches, whatever that last lace number is, you can cast on those stitches and then just practice the lace prior to doing it. So that way you don't feel like you need to, you know, take apart your whole piece. Also, if you haven't done lace before, and you're practicing on a swatch, practicing on larger yarn helps too, because then you can get a little bit better feel for it. And then it will translate more easily to when you're working with the smaller yarn and smaller needles. So covered a whole lot and there's still a lot more to cover. I'm aware of the time. Help me out, Hen. What am I missing?
Yeah, I tagged you once again in a question by
Yes,
Kathy Ann. I don't know if you can see it. And then we have a second one later.
If I add the contrast at the next section with the double stitches you showed, will it be okay if I didn't do that prior? Yes, it will. And it will look okay. Absolutely. And that was answering Kathy Ann's question. And then are you doing the yarn over? Sorry. Are you doing the yarn over front over or back over? So a yarn over is always done in the front of a work. The reason why is because it lines up the stitch appropriately without making it a backwards stitch. So I'm just not following a pattern here. I'm just knitting. A yarn over will always, so here's English style. English holding the yarn in, yes, Donna, thank you. You're always holding the yarn in your right hand if you're English. You're holding the yarn in your left hand if you're continental. I will show both. So when you do a yarn over English, you bring the yarn to the front of the work. And when you go to work the next stitch, it's usually a knit. The yarn over the needle happens naturally when you work the stitch. If you are knitting continental, so holding the yarn in your left hand, you physically yarn over the needle and bring the yarn to the back of the work and then work the next stitch. Work the next stitch. You want the yarn over on the right needle to look like it's going from the physical right side across to the back like that. Is it okay if on the lace I do, yes, you can. Pat, as mentioned, you can do, Pat asked, is it okay to do the SK2P on both rows? She said both sides, but I think you mean both rows. It is that SK2P and then the S2KP. They are both double decreases. So they take away 2 stitches. So honestly, you can use the decrease that you like the best visually. You can use the decrease that you like the best on your hands, or you can remember the most easily. You just need to take away 2 stitches at that moment. I don't think Carol asked about needle sizes and pulling the lace pulling in. Again, blocking really helps with this. And technically, lace is a very loose fabric. And so garter actually pulls in more than lace. If you are really worried about needle sizes and the texture and the tension of your fabric, you might want to go down a needle size to do the lace. That's technically traditionally what happens with lace knitting is you go down a needle size for lace, you go up a needle size for color work, that kind of thing. But I don't think it's necessary in this pattern. I think you can just stick with the same needle size and be totally fine. All right. Carrying the second yarn up. In the repeats, I don't carry my, so let me go ahead and show you. So because we have such a large section here, and again, we don't have a selvage that's written in the pattern, I actually, I did carry my yarn from here to here, and I'll show you how to do that. But when I'm doing this section, this garter section, I don't have my contrast color attached. When I'm doing my lace, I cut my main color. I don't leave it attached. I do leave them attached, and we'll get into this in the next weeks. But I also have it, I think I have it in the video. We can go ahead and carry, and you can see I've practiced different ways of carrying to show you how to carry up the side in this alternating section. But as far as these big chunks, I do not carry the yarn up the side during that. For the smaller pieces, I'm just going to knit across. I'm not following the pattern here. Just getting to the point where I can get to the end of my row. Now you will see that since I did not carry my blue yarn, It's attached way down here. So at where I finished using it. If you do that and you want to bring your blue yarn up, you're going to have a long strand in the back like that. And so what I recommend you do if you want to keep your yarns attached for the whole piece or even for those small times, let me show you what I do here. At the end of every row, so I brought my blue up in the way that I do not recommend in order to show you what I do recommend. If I need to continue using the blue, what I'm going to do is take the blue and bring it under the orange like this. So the orange crosses in the top at the top and then start using my blue like that. So you'll see again, let me zoom in just a little bit. This is the best way to carry yarn. So I'm done with I just finished blue. I want to keep using blue. I want to carry my orange up with it. I take the blue and I go under the orange, under the yarn I'm not using. So it crosses in the back. I kind of hold my other color that I'm not using off to the side and then start knitting with the color that I want to use. And what that does is it kind of crosses in the back and it carries your yarn up the side with you. All right. So I will be online on the Facebook group. And then as mentioned on the Malabrigo blog knit along page, as well as the YouTube videos, there are pre-recorded videos. Feel free to email me too. It's I'll put my email in the chat so everyone can access it. It's knitsisu@gmail.com. I'm happy to support. If you have a question, feel free to, send a picture with the question so I can see a little bit of if you're very specifically talking about your own work. A lot was covered today because a lot kind of comes into the shawl right at once. But next week we will be going over again those decreases. We will also be reviewing the lace a little bit more. We will also be kind of planning for, believe it or not, the bulk of the shawl. The bulk of the shawl is not the repeats. So we have a lot of knitting if you're following along for the prizes, for the giveaways. We have a lot of knitting between now and next week, and the week after. But the bulk of the shawl is actually this garter section up here. So we'll be talking about some tricks on how to, one, carry the yarn, two, how to play with this, how to kind of BYOD with this, and also what comes up. A lot comes up. Thank you, Hen. You've got this, knit. A lot comes up with this. And so we'll be talking about kind of emotionally, mentally, and knitterly what comes up when we're in this section. So Bernadette and Hen, can you help me? Question, what are my colors? I know one of them is sunsets and the other one I think is new.
Yes, the second one is part of the new collection. It's called Fulgor, Fulgor, Fulgor.
Nice. That's the variegated one. This one's
it's the one we used for the pattern file for the sample, which is combined with another color.
Very cool.
It's a beautiful color.
So thank you, everyone. Thank you for being here.
Jill?
Yes. Yes?
Yeah, sorry, this is Rhonda. Quick question. I do have questions about doing want to contact you on your Knit Sisu platform for that or through Facebook?
I would email me directly. I haven't set up the platform yet.
Okay.
I will, if I'm able to do that, like I've done if you aren't aware, in previous knit-alongs, I've had my own personal platform for questions as well. I do actually want to get that started. I was answering more on Facebook. I didn't want to confuse people. The last knit along, there was a little confusion over where to ask questions, and I didn't want to confuse anyone with it. But if you're interested or already on my personal platform, I can set that up too. So, but
And
yeah, feel
your
free to
email
email.
address, is that on the pattern? Your direct
You can email me direct.
Yeah, she's asking for the right email address, I believe.
email address?
It's in the chat. And of course, if you reach out to Malabrigo too, they'll be happy to
Yeah.
help. And oftentimes they'll send me the question too, because I'm happy to support for this specific shawl. So feel free just to send me the questions. Thank you, Kathy. Happy knitting, everyone.
Okay,
Happy knit
that's
front and
easy.
back.
Thank
Happy slipping purl-wise and knit-wise. And I will see you next week.
Enjoy your weekend.
Bye.
Bye, everyone.
Bye, Jill.
Happy Easter.
Happy Easter.